What's going on, everyone? My name is Joseph Reynolds, and joining me once again is the man, the myth, and also the gentleman himself, Jalin Fuller. This time, we're going to be talking about the Cage Warriors San Diego card that's reaching us this weekend, ahead of what looks like a great card, and obviously moving on from your last fight as well. How are you feeling, buddy?
I'm feeling pretty good. Learned a lot of lessons coming off of this one. The biggest of which is I got to taper back that overzealous offense sometimes because it really costed me this time around.
Yeah, and then as well, sort of moving into and seeing the more shows that are coming into the America now. Obviously, Cage Warriors is coming in the last year, and LFA is there that you fought before. To have more shows come in, how important is it to have these different shows there on the road to sort of, whether it be the PFL or Bellator or UFC for some fighters?
It's incredibly important, especially if you can get a show as big as Cage Warriors is. Top show over in Europe, and they bring in a ton of fighters, a ton of talent. I was actually going through this card, and I'm like, there's a ton of American-based fighters fighting on this card. I was more so hoping to be a lot more UK fighters getting to come on over and fight internationally is what I was hoping for. But either way, the more platforms that we can get on the regional scene, the better off every fighter will be.
Yeah, and then moving into the card as well, obviously, there's the addition now of the MMA Academy that Cage Warriors have brought in, and we're going to see the first few fighters from there. I think pretty much from the first three or four fights on the card, it's all from the MMA Academy. The first one is Jean Saragui versus Johnny Gill. Obviously, when you are making your pro debut or your second pro fight in a big promotion, what is that sort of feel like for a fighter when you are making that first big step up for yourself in your pro career?
It's nerve-rattling, to say the least. You don't get that same time to get your feet wet, kind of, and find your style. You're having to find it in these people on a much bigger platform, and knowing that every step you take, another fighter is going to now be able to see this because you're on that larger platform and better break you down.
Yeah, and as well, sort of the next fight, a little different. Fran Breen, obviously making his pro debut alongside Enrique Montalivo. But Fran Breen, he's been out of the cage. He's a UK fighter since 2021. His last two fights were coming off a loss. He's been out for 2 years. To come back in, obviously, Cage Warriors again, MMA Academy, 2 years out, but this time with pro rules. Do you feel as though that might play on his mind a little bit, or how do you think he'd go into this fight with that time out and what he's got to prove as his pro debut?
It's got to play on his mind, especially in divisions that are as stacked as the flyweight divisions are. Your losses in history, fight history, can pay a lot more attention because as stacked as flyweight is across every major promotion that has the weight class, it's also shallow at the same time. So these things it's got to be playing on his mind. This is a long way off. I'm looking to make a big splash, fresh start as a pro debut. Once you go pro, and it doesn't matter anymore. It really doesn't. That's when you were finding your feet. But now this is where everything actually has some weight behind it. It's got to be effective.
Yeah, and then as well, the next one, obviously, again, another UK fighter I'm more than aware of in Teddy Abbott Stringer, taking on an 0-3 Brian Shell. I feel like this pro fight for him is going to be that one where he should come away with the win. It's more, he's been an amateur. I believe he's got somewhere around 20 plus fights. People thought he should have gone pro quite a while ago, but now he's done it under the MMA Academy. In terms of looking at the buzz that's around his name since being in the MMA Academy and what he'll be looking to prove, what do you feel as though he's going through his mind, knowing how much of a successful amateur career he had?
He's got the things going through his mind, I feel, has to just be unadulterated confidence. This is a fight that he knows he's supposed to win, and he's a finisher. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through his amateur record or not, but he's got quite a few finishes, and many of them come in the first round. I think that this fight is his to take, but he cannot go in here underestimating an opponent who already has that pro experience.
Yeah, and as well, even into the next fight with Anthony Arezzo, both of them that had experience at the IMAFs, both him and Teddy. In terms of getting that experience, they both know what it's like to fly out to different countries and compete there in different sort of settings with different sort of rules and weightings. But do you feel as though that experience that they've got there is going to translate really well for them as they go into the pro careers as well?
Oh yeah, it has to transfer well for them. You know, the biggest thing as a pro is that travel fight feel. You know, you're not just fighting in the hometown anymore in your comfort zone. You're constantly going to be on the move in different places. And for them to already have international experience coming into this fight, it's going to be huge factors for them.
Yeah, and then sort of moving on as well, the first fight where we see two experienced fighters at pro or who've had more than a fight apiece. Obviously, Elijah Harris versus Chris Lewis, two heavyweights that are going to be throwing it down. I believe it's a debut at heavyweight for Elijah Harris as well. When you do get two heavyweights in there, you always expect some sort of violence. It's guaranteed. But taking a look at fights, sort of a reversing records 4-2 versus 2-4, what do you feel as though this fight can sort of bring to the table for both fighters?
The biggest thing I feel this fight brings to the table for Elijah is a new start. He's kind of taken that meta of bringing light heavyweight skills and speed up to heavyweight, and we've seen a ton of fighters right now have that success and experience. So I think that that's going to be a big factor for him. This is a fresh start for him, a fresh beginning. You practically might as well call it 0-0 for him making that heavyweight debut. And for Chris Lewis, this is a crossroads. If he wants to continue, if he wants to move on, a victory here is paramount.
Yeah, and when you do sort of have that pro career where you've had a few mixed results and you still know you're not going in there just to get paid, you are going in there with the intention of winning every time. What do you feel as though players and a fighter's mind sort of early on when they do get this mixed bag of results and the pro career doesn't start out quite how they'd imagined it to?
I would have to say when you get that mixed result, but you're still looking to achieve great things, it puts that little drop, that seeping drop of poison in the back of your head. You're like, can I do this? Am I good enough? Why can't I get a win streak going? There are fighters who get the win and then they just feel pressure after winning to be able to carry on with a win streak. You know, that has pressure in and of itself, going there with not only the self expectations of the expectations of everyone around you. So for Chris Lewis, I'm sure that the skill set is there. I'm positive that it is. But at this point in his career, there has to be so much doubt plaguing him that it has to be affecting his performances. Whether it's wanting to break the current streak that he's on. You know, he's lost 4 straight. So he's wanting to break that. But there's a pressure that comes with wanting to break that losing streak. There's a pressure of wanting to finally show people, hey, what I'm doing, I'm meant to be doing. You know, every loss is another person saying, hey, buddy, are you sure this is what you want to do? And that right there, that echo in the back of your mind, it's paralyzing. It's crippling for a fighter.
Yeah, and do you feel as though when you are faced with those sort of difficult times, do you feel as though it is also a make or break for a fighter and that some come out on the other side and it's the best thing that could have really happened to them? So when you are faced with those different sort of problems that come as a pro career, how important is it for that fighter to be able to use it to push them on forward?
It's paramount. And like you pointed out, not a lot of people can. It's real kind of like a fight or flight thing in your head. Sometimes people just do it automatically. They're like, oh, I lost. Prepare to see the greatest me you've ever seen after that loss. Some people, though, they take one loss, they take 2 in a row. They're never the same. And it's not that their skill set changed. Nothing changed with them physically. It's all up top. It's all mental. And it's part of that is because so many people are obsessed with how mental the fight game is when they really need to be breaking it down and reminding themselves, this is about what I physically can do, not what I mentally can do. Okay, if you don't believe that you can and your mind isn't firing how your body needs it to fire, when you get into that cage, you're going to get halted. And now you can't physically do the things that you've always known you can.
Yeah, and then sort of moving into the next fight, obviously, it's another fighter from the MMA Academy. 4-0, mostly fought in Southeast Asia. He's had some good opponents as well so far in his pro career, taking on a James Sell. Again, I feel like it's one of those fights where you expect Francois Orman to come in there and get a win. They've given him an opponent who hasn't won in his last 3 fights. So when you are given these sort of fights where you're expected to win but still have a game opponent in there that can cause problems, Do you feel as though there is any pressure that it adds, or do you feel as though for the most part these fighters are going to be extremely confident with whatever they have sort of thrown in them in that fight?
Whenever they have that O next to their name, they're always going to be extremely confident going into any of these situations. But I feel as though it puts a certain amount of pressure. When you're supposed to beat somebody, every second that they're in there with you, you start to feel like, I need to get this guy out of here. He's not on my level. I should already have this over and done with. And it's even more so for an undefeated fighter who they're riding high. Everyone in their family is telling them, I got this. You're going to be the man. You're the next guy. Especially for France here, because he literally has 3 first-round finishes. And him going in here with another dude who's 3-3, they're like, oh, another one bites the dust. You're going to get him out of here. So I just hope that he doesn't feel pressure to get this fight over with in the first round and really takes his time.
Yeah, and as well, obviously, with the MMA Academy, it's clear that Cagers have obviously invested a lot of time into them already with all these different training, bringing them out to San Diego as well. So do you feel as though there's almost the added pressure from that as well, that they've got to perform? I don't really know what it looks like for them if they do get a loss in the MMA Academy, but when they are in there and they've got the risk of they may lose, do you feel as though it's a little added pressure for them, or do you feel as though it's the added confidence for them at the same time?
It's a mix of both. It's at the same time, especially from having so many of his training partners on the card with him, having gone through the camp together, having built your skills up together and your confidence alongside one another. That's gonna push all of them through. That's gonna push them all through. But at the same time, that promotional pressure is heavy. Hey, we're putting all this time. We're making sure all your teammates are able to come in on this card. We're backing you guys. You better perform. If we don't, like, they'll think in the back of their heads, man, if we lose, if we come out of this negative on a team, are they still going to want to back us to their back? So we're going to be able to get these huge fights on a platform like Cage Warriors, making our debuts. We got a couple of guys here from the MMA Academy making their debut on a Cage Warriors card, which is already huge. This is a place where a lot of seasoned, experienced guys have to wait their turn to get a chance in Cage Warriors. So that has to all play a factor.
Yeah, and then as well, sort of moving on to the next fight, obviously, Jovadan Kajev versus Sonny. I'm going to try with the surname. I'm not great with him. In Hotep, obviously, he came back after what looks like a 4-year layoff on a split decision loss on Bellator. Came back 6 months ago against a debuting opponent. And then his opponent as well, they've got the experience as pros, but they've not really faced those big competitions as of yet. Both fighters will be the toughest one for each other. On a promotion like this, obviously, when you have that chance to get back, obviously, Sonny's had the taste of Bellator, these major promotions. How do you sort of feel a fighter is when they do get on their major shows, and how hungry are they to stay on there and keep building themselves up from that point?
So first and foremost, this is my pick for fight of the night. This is my dog fight. For Sunni, him coming from that Bellator experience already and looking good in his Bellator debut, even though he came out on the other side of a split decision loss, I know personally his fight IQ is very high. But at the same time, Sunni coming into this fight, having already experienced higher level stuff, he's expecting to win. After you fight in these bigger promotions, you don't believe that the guys who you're fighting on the regional scene can hang with you. And like, I've already been there. I've seen the next level of competition, and I did very well. So that can always play a factor. I don't think it will play a factor here with Sunni, though. I believe he's going to go in there the same way that he usually does, and utilize that outrageous reach for 155 pounds of an 80.5-inch reach, and really just pick at this guy and take his time.
Yeah, and when you do start having an opponent with a reach like that, or ridiculous height as well, how hard is it to sort of prepare for those fighters as well? Obviously, knowing that there's not really many people that have those sort of accolades. So does it make it harder to prepare for fighters like that, or what sort of preparation would they look at for an opponent that's built in a sort of different way to most of us in the division?
So it's dang near impossible. You're not going to find a guy who not only has the same body type, but that's going to bring the same speed, dynamism, explosivity You're not going to be able to find that, especially at lightweight, where the average reach on any of your lightweight training partners is going to be anywhere from 70 to at most 74. And most people consider 70 inches at 155 to be enormous, gigantic. Suni has the exact same reach as me, and I'm 6'2" at 170. So I would have to say for him, he's going to be bringing in a lot of welterweight training partners, or at least trying to get in as much work with those welterweights. But he has to maintain the thought that Suni's going to be faster. Suni's going to be longer. He's going to be snappier. But if I was, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this last name, the surname here, Kovanev. If I was him, I would be preferring to get in work with training partners who are a weight class or two above me, having prepared for this fight, or taking the opposite approach and going with guys at 45 and 35, so I can constantly have my reaction timing and speed ready.
Yeah, and so looking into the next fight as well is, again, two experienced fighters, Conor Wilson versus David Lopez. Obviously, David Lopez, he had an experienced amateur career, and then Conor Wilson, he's fought on cage warriors in the past, hasn't won on those occasions, went back on the regional scene here in the UK and fought on FCC. He's now got a chance to come back and sort of redeem himself, I believe, again, under that sort of MMA Academy banner. So when you do come into this sort of fight where both fighters have got experience, obviously, David Lopez now 32, 2-1 in his pro career, do you feel as though this is a fight he'll be looking at that he needs to win to take that next step? Or do you feel as though both fighters are the same sort of circumstance, being both experienced in the careers?
It's got to be, especially at 125, they know that they have to win this fight if they want to take the next step, which is an outrageous amount of pressure. There's no pressure quite like fighting for your job, especially if you're trying to move up in your job. David Lopez at his age at flyweight, now he is in his physical prime, but you can't waste those years. These years are paramount. You see a lot of guys enter their prime and they take their foot off the gas and they end up fighting 1 to 2 times a year. I'm like, buddy, this is your moment. This is when you'll be able to do the absolute most in your career and get the most optimal results. So he needs this win because going from 3-1 is a whole lot different than dropping to 2-2.
Yeah, and then moving on to the next one as well, you have Damon the Nomad Wilson and John De Jesus as well. In terms of sort of taking a look at this fight, Damon Wilson, he was looking like if he'd have beat Harilla that he'd have gone the title shot. He fell short on that opportunity, but he's come back and won since. And then John De Jesus is obviously very well experienced, fought on cage warriors many times, fought in Bellator as well. He's no stranger to these sort of fights. So in terms of looking at what each fighter would be looking to bring to the table and their different circumstances going into it, how do you sort of see this fight playing out a little bit?
I mean, I gotta to side with Williams here. I mean, John De Jesus is very experienced. He almost has 30 fights here. 4 fights in Bellator. He's got a ton of knockout wins, got some submission wins, and no stranger to taking it to the distance either. But I just don't think that it's going to be enough for him to overcome Wilson, honestly. He's surging right now. He tasted that defeat, and he showed that he can improve from that. His abilities haven't stagnated after he lost. He didn't come back, and we didn't see the exact same guy after that loss. He improved after that. So I think that adaptability and willingness to learn and improve is going to be what's going to push him over against the guy in De Jesus, who kind of set in his style. You're not going to really see much change from him. He's going to be the same guy. His style is cemented in stone at almost 30 fights.
Yeah, and now as well, in terms of sort of looking for Damon Wilson, obviously brought him over to the UK for the UK versus USA card. Do you feel as though in his mind as well that he'll be feeling with a win here, he wants to get straight back to the title? Or what do you feel as though will be going through his mind now in terms of the plan that he'll have for after this fight without overlooking his opponent?
He has to, in all honesty, the second you make a couple of those plans for after, part of you has already looked past the guy. You're like, I'm going to win. Like, there's one thing in being prepared and having your step-by-step plan, but I don't think that this is a fight he needs to be looking too far ahead from. Of course, if with a win here, an impressive win, he should call for that title shot rematch. That not rematch, just another title shot opportunity is what I would say he should call for. But also, don't be afraid to stretch out and reach a little bit further. This is your first fight in America. It's a good time to call your shot for one of the bigger organizations afterwards as well.
Yeah, and then as well, sort of taking a look in at the co-main event, obviously both fighters have won the last 5 fights. Moses Diaz being undefeated at 5-0. Obviously, Roberto Hernandez beat the man we just spoke about in Don Jesus by a split decision. In terms of when you have a fight like this, it's co-main event. Roberto Hernandez, he knows how it feels in Cage Warriors. He knows how the day is going to be in the arena, the venue. Whereas Moses Diaz, he's coming off of winning Combate Global, not having fought in Cage Warriors before. Do you feel as though Roberto Hernandez, the cards are in his hands a little bit, knowing that he understands how these days are going to work with Cage Warriors on fight day? Or what do you feel as though is going through both their minds, knowing how big of a fight this is for both of them?
Both of them have to be coming into this fight with I cannot be touched type of mindset. Roberto, like you said, this is another day in the park. He's going into his own backyard for this, essentially, having to be with Cage Warriors. But Diaz is undefeated. I believe four knockouts are on his record out of his 5. He's not going to care. In his mind, it doesn't matter that Roberto has the comfortability within Cage Warriors. He's not going to pay that any attention. He's the man right now in his head. But I believe that in this co-main event slot, I think that Roberto Hernandez's diversity in his skill set is what's going to edge it out.
Yeah, and when you do sort of take a look at these fighters in terms of what can be next for them, do you feel as though this is, again, one of those fights that will allow them to take the next step? But even if one of them comes off of a loss, with a good performance, they can still stay where they are and sort of prove that they belong at the level that they're taking the step up for in this fight. So do you feel as though, even though they'll be feeling a bit of pressure, that for them, it's only sort of wins that they can take away from this fight, or advantages that are going to benefit them in the long run?
I think that both of them, even with the pressure, I think win or lose, the loser still has the option to move forward within Cage Warriors to try to grab at that belt if the performance is impressive. And I think the winner of this match for sure will see either a title shot opportunity or a contender series call-up. This is a very important fight. And in my personal opinion, the biggest stakes fight on the card.
Yeah, and as well, sort of moving into the main event, Jamie Lynch versus Kyle O'Driscoll. Obviously, Kyle Driscoll, his last fight was against George Hardwick, where he didn't get the win. And going into that fight, he was very confident he'd win. By this time, he expected himself, I'm sure, to be in the UFC. Obviously, with a win there, he would have been signed. He'd already won on the Contender Series before, and it didn't go his way. So do you feel as though making his return fight after some time out against another good fighter in James Lynch, that he's going to want to go out there and prove that he does deserve that next step despite the last defeat?
100%. You hit the nail on the head with that one. Comes to George Hardwick, who is a phenomenal fighter. This is his opportunity to show, not only do I still belong at this level, but I'm supposed to be above it. You know, that's in my mind where he's going to be taking this in his head. But his opponent, James Lynch, he's going to be trouble. You know, this is a guy who, although he has lost by knockout, submission, and decision, all 3, he's not going to be a walk in the park. I think that James Lynch here, if he comes correctly, he has all the tools to get this win, especially coming off of somebody who has, in all honesty, in Driscoll, might have had his confidence shaken a little bit, losing. Because like you said, he talked pretty big going into that George Hardwick fight. He thought that fight was his. It was his to take. And then to essentially, in my opinion, get outfought by George Hardwick and then finished in the 4th in the championship rounds, he's going to be struggling to bounce back from that loss, even with the amount of time that has passed since then. That I actually think the layoff might have done him more harm than good coming into this fight against another super game opponent in James Lynch.
Yeah, and then as well, just a final from myself with the card. Obviously, you mentioned a little bit in what you feel as though is going to be your barn burner for the night. But is there any other names or fights that you're looking forward to that you feel as though are must-watch fights? Sorry, they're on the card this coming weekend.
Let's see. I mean, that Sunni, like I said, for fight of the night, Sunni Imhotep and Jordan, they're not going to be a fight to miss. I'm very curious to see how Elijah Harris does is move up to heavyweight. I really think that's another one to keep your eyes on. That main event, really, I'm mainly waiting to see how Kyle bounces back, and I'm hoping that I see the best him yet. Roberto Hernandez and Moses Diaz, that is the biggest stakes. That is the fight. If you don't watch any other fight on this Cage Warriors card, but you should tune in because every one of these fights are amazing. That would be the fight to see. That's the one to see, in my opinion. And then as far as the prelims are concerned, I'm very, very interested to see Anthony and Jeremy's fight. I'm very interested to see how that plays out, as well as Stringer versus Shell.
Well, there we go. That is everything from myself. As always, it's great to be joined by yourself. If you'd like to let people know what could be coming next for you, if there is anything in the pipelines at the moment, and then as well as always, sponsors, things like that, obviously feel free to go ahead, buddy.
So, guys, please keep your eye out for me. I'm looking to jump right back into the cage in July. Hopefully July 25th on the LFA's Texas card that they're having. Hopefully we can get that done. I really wanted a quicker turnaround. My suspension was very short, even coming off of the knockout loss that I just suffered. The style knockout being, for the most part, a flat. Got tested and cleared, no further concussion symptoms at all. I'm ready to go. So please tune in. I'm hounding the LFA to get me a fight July. Thank you, El Chino Mills and Duke City MMA, as well as United Fit MMA, John Dotson, Frank Gomez, and my manager, Ricky Cottonsteady.
There we go. As always, thank you very much for your time. That has been your Cage Warriors San Diego Cage Warriors 155 preview show with the gentleman himself, Jalin Fuller. As always, greatly appreciate your time, buddy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.